The rehearsal dinner was perfect. White tablecloths, candlelight reflecting off champagne glasses, everyone laughing and celebrating. I was marrying Daniel in less than 24 hours, and I'd never felt more certain about anything in my life. We'd been together 3 years, and he was everything I'd ever wanted. Charming, successful, attentive. His family had welcomed me with open arms, especially his mother Patricia, who'd been helping plan every detail of the wedding. But his father Robert had always been different. Distant. Polite, but never warm. I'd assumed he was just reserved, one of those quiet men who showed love through actions rather than words. That night, as dessert was being served, Robert approached my table. His face looked strained, older somehow. "Can I speak with you privately?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. I followed him out to the venue's garden, away from the music and laughter. Under the string lights, he turned to face me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Desperation. "I need to tell you something about Daniel," he said. "Something you deserve to know before tomorrow." I should have listened. I should have heard the pain in his voice, seen the way his hands trembled as he tried to find the right words. But I was 26 years old, in love, and convinced that nothing could be wrong with the man I was about to marry. "I know this seems strange," Robert continued, "but there are things about my son that you don't see. Patterns. The way he treats people when he doesn't get what he wants. I've watched him do this before, and I can't stand by and watch it happen again." The words felt like an attack, like he was trying to sabotage my happiness on the eve of my wedding. "Do this before," I repeated, my voice sharp. "What are you talking about?" Robert looked tortured. "His first engagement. The girl before you. It started the same way, all romance and promises, but after the wedding things changed. He became controlling, manipulative. She left after 8 months. Broken. I felt anger rising in my chest. Daniel had told me about that relationship. How his ex was unstable. How she'd cheated and blamed him. "That's not what happened," I said coldly. "She hurt him. He told me everything." Robert's face crumpled with something between pity and frustration. "That's what he tells everyone." And that's what he told us too, until I tracked her down and heard her side. She had texts, emails, proof of what he'd done. The isolation. The gaslighting. How he'd turned her friends and family against her until she had no one. I felt my hands clench into fists. This man was trying to ruin my wedding with lies about his own son. What kind of father does that? "I think you should go back inside," I said, my voice ice. "I don't know why you're doing this, but Daniel and I are getting married tomorrow, and nothing you say is going to change that." Robert reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is her number. Please, just talk to her. That's all I'm asking. One conversation before you commit your life to him." I didn't take the paper. Instead, I turned and walked back into the rehearsal dinner, leaving him standing alone in the garden. When Daniel asked if everything was okay, I smiled and said his father just wanted to welcome me to the family. I didn't mention the warning. I didn't mention the doubt that had been planted, small and toxic, in the back of my mind. The next day I walked down the aisle in my white dress, and Robert looked like he was attending a funeral. The first 6 months were beautiful. We honeymooned in Greece, came home to our new apartment, fell into the rhythm of married life. Daniel was attentive, loving, everything I'd hoped for. But then small things started changing. He'd get irritated when I made plans with friends without checking with him first. He'd make comments about my clothes being too revealing, my laugh too loud at parties. "I just want to protect you," he'd say. "People take advantage of women who are too trusting." I told myself he was just being protective. That marriage meant compromise. When my best friend Sarah called less frequently, I assumed she was busy. When my sister stopped inviting me to family dinners, I thought maybe I'd offended her somehow. It didn't occur to me that Daniel had been slowly poisoning those relationships, making comments to them about how I'd changed, how I didn't have time for them anymore. Not until my mother showed up at my door one afternoon, uninvited, with tears in her eyes. "What happened to you?" she asked. "You've disappeared. Every time I call, Daniel says you're busy or tired or not feeling well." That conversation with my mother cracked something open. I started paying attention, noticing. The way Daniel would answer my phone when I was in the shower and tell people I'd call back, then never mention it. How he'd schedule things for us on nights when I had plans with others, then act hurt when I suggested going alone. The subtle ways he'd rewrite our arguments in his mind, making me doubt my own memory. "I never said that," he'd insist, so convincingly that I'd wonder if I was losing my mind. One night, after he accused me of flirting with a waiter and gave me the silent treatment for 2 days, I found myself in the bathroom at 2 a.m., sitting on the cold tile floor, trying to remember who I'd been before. The confident woman who'd laughed easily and made her own decisions felt like a stranger. I thought about Robert's warning, about that piece of paper with the phone number I'd refused to take, about the woman Daniel had convinced everyone was crazy. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd been afraid to do. I searched for Daniel's ex-fiancée on social media. Her name was Lauren Mitchell. Her profile was private, but her profile picture showed a woman about my age with kind eyes and a genuine smile. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to send her a message. I kept deleting and rewriting it, terrified of what she might say, more terrified of what she might confirm. Finally, I wrote, "My name's Rachel. I'm married to Daniel. His father tried to warn me before the wedding, and I didn't listen. I think I need to listen now." She responded within an hour. "Can we meet in person? There are things you need to see." We met at a coffee shop across town where I knew Daniel would never go. Lauren brought a folder. Inside were screenshots of messages, emails, even recordings she'd made toward the end of their relationship when she'd started documenting things. Because he'd convinced her she was remembering events wrong. I read his words, saw the patterns. The way he'd isolated her from her family by telling them she was struggling with mental health issues. How he'd controlled their finances, making her ask permission for every purchase. The gaslighting so subtle and constant that she'd actually started to believe she was losing her mind. "His father was the only one who believed me," Lauren said quietly. "Robert knew what his son was capable of because he'd seen glimpses of it his whole life. He tried to warn you, didn't he?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I'm so sorry," Lauren continued. "I hoped he'd changed. But men like Daniel don't change. They just get better at hiding it." I went home that night and started planning. Not emotionally, not reactively, but with the cold calculation of someone who'd finally seen the trap she was in. I documented everything, set up a separate bank account Daniel didn't know about, quietly reconnected with the friends and family he'd distanced me from, apologizing without explaining yet. I consulted a lawyer who specialized in difficult divorces. And then I did something that surprised even me. I called Robert. We met at the same garden where he'd tried to warn me 18 months earlier. He looked older, more tired. "I know," I said simply. "You were right. About everything." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry. I should have tried harder. I stopped him. You did what you could. I was the one who didn't listen." We talked for 2 hours. He told me about Daniel's childhood, the signs he and Patricia had missed or excused, how his son had learned to manipulate from an early age, always charming to outsiders, different behind closed doors. Patricia doesn't see it, Robert said sadly. She never has. When you leave, she'll believe his version, but I'll know the truth. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I need your help, I said, to do this right, to make sure he can't hurt anyone else. The family dinner was Patricia's idea, a celebration of our second anniversary. Daniel had been planning it for weeks, excited to show off our perfect marriage to his parents. I had agreed with a smile, knowing it would be the perfect setting. We sat around the same table where we'd had our rehearsal dinner, the irony not lost on me. Daniel was charming as always, telling stories, making his mother laugh. But I noticed Robert watching his son with sad, knowing eyes. Halfway through the meal, I reached into my purse. Actually, there's something I need to share with everyone, I said, my voice steady. I placed an envelope in front of Daniel. Divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow. The table went silent. Daniel's face cycled through shock, confusion, then a flash of anger he quickly masked. Honey, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke? I looked at Patricia, who was staring at me in horror. I wish it were. But your son has spent the last year isolating me, controlling me, and making me doubt my own sanity. Just like he did to Lauren. Just like he'll do to the next woman if someone doesn't stop him. Daniel stood up, his chair scraping loudly. You're being hysterical. Mum, Dad, she's been under a lot of stress lately. I have recordings, I interrupted. Of the things you say when you think no one's listening. Text messages. Financial records showing how you've controlled our money. And statements from Lauren, my therapist. And others who've witnessed your behavior. Patricia started to object, to defend her son, but Robert spoke first. She's telling the truth, Patricia. I tried to warn her before the wedding. I tried to warn you years ago about the patterns we were seeing. We failed him by not getting him help, and we failed these women by not protecting them. Daniel's mask finally slipped. The charm disappeared, replaced by cold rage. You're all insane! Rachel, if you walk out of here, you'll regret it. No one will believe you. No one will. I already do, Robert said quietly. And I'll testify to that in court if necessary. I stood up, gathering my things. The woman who'd sat in this same spot 2 years ago, naive and in love, felt like someone from another lifetime. I'm staying with my sister. The lawyer will contact you about dividing assets. Don't call me. Don't come to my workplace. If you violate the restraining order I'm filing, I'll make sure every piece of evidence I have becomes public record. As I walked toward the door, Robert followed me out. In the parking lot, under the same string lights where he'd tried to save me, I finally broke down. All the fear, the anger, the grief for the marriage I'd thought I had, came pouring out. Robert hugged me, this man who'd tried to protect me when I wouldn't protect myself. You're going to be okay, he whispered. You're so much stronger than he ever let you believe. 6 months later, I was. The divorce was finalized. I'd rebuilt my relationship, started therapy, rediscovered who I was before Daniel had systematically dismantled my sense of self. And when Robert invited me to coffee to check on how I was doing, I went. Not as his daughter-in-law, but as someone who understood that real family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up to tell you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. Even when it costs them everything.